After the launch of AC3, Ubisoft decided to change things up by expanding on the naval system from that game and gave us a brand new setting, which was the Golden Age of Piracy with a new protagonist, Edward Kenway. Admittingly, it was a risk to move away from the traditional roots of the franchise by making us play as a straight up pirate instead of an assassin, and giving more focus and emphasis to the naval exploration and combat instead of the typical Assassin's Creed gameplay loop. The risk paid off since Black Flag sold the highest number of copies than any other game in the franchise at the time. Of course, that spot is taken by Assassin's Creed Valhalla now, but it proved to Ubisoft that if they put more focus on the historical setting of the game and marketing these games that way, they are likely to get more people to buy. Black Flag was the game that started this general trend in my opinion. Unfortunately, because of this, a lot of the focus on the Assassins vs Templars conflict was taken away. This is especially true if you see the marketing of the newer AC games. There is little to no mention of Assassins or Templars. Even with AC Shadows coming out this year where you're playing as an assassin, the game seems to focus more on the Feudal Japan setting and playing as a black samurai, which is another controversy in itself that I don't want to get into right now. Anyway, because of this, the general reception of this game is that it's a great pirate game but a really bad Assassin's Creed game, which is a statement that I wholeheartedly disagree with, and I'll explain why in this video, where we will be revisiting Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. We'll be analyzing its gameplay mechanics, its open world, side activities, and most importantly, its narrative, and seeing whether it has aged well in today's day and age. This video will be structured similarly to my AC1 and AC3 video, with each section covering an aspect of the game. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you do. And without further ado, let's jump into this grand pirate adventure. Before getting into the analysis, I really want to take my time talking about my history with this game. I was only 10 around that time and I was really excited about Black Flag when it first came out. Since I didn't really have access to a console or a powerful gaming PC at the time, so I used to watch Let's Plays of the game on YouTube. I used to watch YouTubers like the Rad Brad and whatnot. Just the sheer joy of seeing the gameplay of this game was enough to get me through my day. I know it's weird to watch other people play the game that you want. It feels like being cucked, but I like it. And no, it doesn't mean I have a cucking fetish. I mean, come on guys, even I am not that down bad. I appreciated the fact that a game like this existed and seeing it in action gave me sheer joy. It really makes you appreciate the little things in life, doesn't it? Back when games were just fun to look at. It's such a shame that I don't really get the same feeling with newer AAA titles coming out today, or in Ubisoft's case, quadruple A games. Anyway, the point being, I loved Black Flag. I also did a Let's Play series of it on my YouTube channel when I finally got the game, on my very shitty laptop with the lowest graphical settings. Seriously, it was really bad, which is why I unlisted it. I still enjoyed my time with this game though, even with the lowest settings and resolution, so revisiting it was a blast. And I know you're tired of me rambling on about my boring life experiences, so let's get on with the analysis portion of this video. Assassin's Creed 4 has one of the most scenic and beautiful open worlds from the series. It's such a breath of fresh air from going from boring and bland cities of America in AC3 to being free to explore the vibrant seas of the Caribbean. And man, sailing the vast ocean and seeing the sunset on the horizon really makes me feel calm, peaceful and relaxed. Just taking in the scenic views and not doing anything but sailing. And I have to say the graphics of this game look gorgeous and have aged like fine wine. From the dense jungles to the bright turquoise seas, the sandy beaches and islands and sprawling cities, the environments of this game never fail to blow me out the water. Pun intended. Talking about the cities, Black Flag has three major ones: Havana, Nassau and Kingston. Havana is absolutely stunning with colorful buildings, narrow streets and magnificent monuments. Apparently it was designed with the intention of giving homage to the cities from AC2, and they have really succeeded in that aspect, if that was the case. It's definitely become one of my favorite cities from the series. Then we have Nassau. Now I don't know about you, but I really like the vibe of this city. It manages to have a life and character of its own, as it feels less like a city and more like a small colony of sorts, which makes sense considering that this is where most of the notorious pirates used to hang out and drink, as they own this place. I like what the city stands for, which is being free and rebellious against the authorities, something which ties in quite well with the main purpose and intention of this game. Sure, it lacks the grandiose and extravagance of Havana, but it does a good job at differentiating itself and making its own identity from the rest of the cities in the series, and is low-key pretty underrated in my opinion. Lastly, we have Kingston. This city isn't really that special in my opinion. It feels pretty bland and lackluster with nothing much to set it apart, which is kind of disappointing considering that a lot happened in Kingston around that time. There's not really much to write home about with this city, and it falls short in comparison to Havana and Nassau. I also want to talk about Great Inagua, which is a small island and home to Edward during his time in the Caribbean. I like that it feels very much like a little cozy Caribbean cove that we can come back to and explore freely without the fear of enemies lurking around. Also, Edward has a pretty sweet mansion overlooking the coastline. What's not to complain about? You can renovate and open a harbour master, general store, and also fix up the mansion among other things. A little side activity that you can do in this area is that you find this native chick standing right in front of your bedroom. You can press interact when you're near her and she starts running away from you. You gotta chase her down and then the screen turns black when you've caught up to her. And you know what happens next, right? She's lying in the bed after that. I know it doesn't sound that great when you put it under this context, but hey, you can invite another girl to join in the fun. If it's all consensual, of course. It must be, right? Right? Anyway, I really want to touch upon how insanely detailed this game is. Like, you can see the wet cloth physics on Edward's robes as soon as he comes out of the water and how steadily the water dries out. The ocean and wave physics also look commendable. Props to Ubisoft Singapore for making these realistic and accurately simulated waves. I also really like how the rain droplets patter down on the screen when you're sailing the seas during a heavy thunderstorm. It really makes the game that much more immersive, and it's pretty impressive for a game that came out during the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, which was last to last gen. Jesus, it's really been that long since the PS4 and Xbox One came out? God, I'm getting old. One last detail that I found pretty cool was that the world of this game feels so alive. Since this is during the time when England and Spain were at war, you'd see English and Spanish ships attack each other in the world. You also see them attacking other pirate ships. I like that the ship NPCs have a life of their own here and aren't just sailing around aimlessly. The world of Assassin's Creed 4 is absolutely breathtaking. It's pretty vast and massive too. Now I know I said in my previous video that I do not like open areas in Assassin's Creed and I would much rather have dense and grounded cities, but I like the way Black Flag handles its open world, as majority of the map is just the ocean and sailing through point A to point B. It never really got boring for me, and considering that you can plunder ships and do other side content along the way, which I would get into soon, it always kept me engaged, as opposed to large stretches of open fields with only small collectibles to grab in between, like in the newer AC games and also in AC3. This game really nails exploration to the T, as you can get out of your ship at almost any given moment and explore the nearby island. No other Ubisoft game has come close to giving me this feeling of complete freedom and fun while exploring the world, which is a testament to how well the open world is designed in this game. Now let's move on to the next section, which is where we'll be looking at the gameplay mechanics. Now I would mainly be focusing on the naval gameplay in this section, as the general gameplay works pretty similarly to AC3, so you can watch my video on AC3 if you want to hear my general thoughts and feelings on this gameplay system. The parkour in Black Flag is pretty similar to AC3, the combat and stealth are too. However, I would say that the combat is a massive downgrade from AC3. It is way too easy and lacks the challenge that AC3's combat offered. Like for real, every time I had a combat encounter in this game, I just wanted to get it over with to get to the next thing. The tougher enemies are also really dumbed down to be easier to beat. You can literally finish them with the press of 2 buttons. That's how easy this shit is. Now I know the combat wasn't really the best part about these games, and I can attest to the fact that the older AC games' combat system is much weaker than the recent RPG games. And this is coming from someone who is not a fan of those games. AC3 is probably the closest we got to having a functional system from the older games, and 4 threw all of that out the window. It's really quite a shame. Anyway, I'd like to touch a little upon stealth as well before getting to the naval. Stealth operates pretty similarly to 3 as I said, however this time around there's new obstacles and challenges placed along your way, with the inclusion of enemy scouts and alarm bells. It adds a new layer of challenge to stealth which I like. You also got a new tool called the blowpipe at your disposal, which can be used to put guards to sleep or turn them berserk so they literally attack everything that moves. Typically in a stealth scenario in this game, it's a better choice to prioritize taking out the enemy scout looking over everything to a watchtower, as they are much more likely to detect you from afar than the normal guards. I usually use the sleep darts on them to put them to sleep and then climb up and take them down. It's also better to disable alarm bells whilst you're at it, as guards would use it to call more reinforcements if they see something sus. Generally, I thought that stealth was much better in AC4, and we're certainly given more opportunities to use it both in the main missions and the side content, which is one of the bigger complaints I had about 3, as we clearly didn't get enough of it. The courtesans from the Etcher trilogy are also back in this game. However, I didn't really use them as much. I only used them a little bit during the beginning of the game, since the game actually encouraged you to use them. However, the problem with this game is that it doesn't really encourage you to use social stealth as much as the games before, which is quite a shame and the beginning of Ubisoft removing integral features from this series, thus dissolving the brand's identity for the sake of mass appeal. Now let's talk about the naval gameplay, which is the main appeal of this game. Since AC3 introduced a naval system into the series, 4 has pretty much perfected it. Your ship is called the Jackdaw, and it's a pretty cool ship. You would use this ship throughout your journey to traverse the Caribbean. Instead of half sail or full sail, you can reduce the speed of your ship by pressing and holding down one button, in my case the button being B. You gotta hold down the button if you want the ship to fully stop, and then you can let go of the wheel. You can increase the speed of your ship by pressing A on your controller if you're on Xbox or using the controller for PC. The fastest that the Jackdaw can go is the travel speed, which is when the camera pans out looking over the horizon the overall exterior of the ship. Which is perfect. I couldn't have asked for anything better, as this allows you to fully take in your surroundings and the breathtaking views of the Caribbean while sailing. Which is something you couldn't do in 3, as you were pretty much locked in one camera view just behind the player. But in this game, the Jackdaw is pretty much the second main protagonist, so it makes sense to have the camera pan to the back of it instead. The Jackdaw also feels a lot smoother to control than the Aquila in AC3. Talking about the naval combat in AC4, you can now decide which trajectory you want to shoot your cannons at, which now makes it possible for you to shoot cannons at a further distance. You can also use swivel guns to automatically aim and hit weak points of ships pretty quickly, instead of slowly taking your time to manually aim at them like AC3. Cannon types like the chain shot and heavy shot also make a return from 3, along with fire barrels that you can launch from the stern of the ship and quickly shoot at them using swivel guns to do damage to the ships behind you. I didn't really find much use for these, to be honest, as whenever I used to launch them it was already too late as the ships were already well past the vicinity of the barrels. Another thing which I found to be quite useless was the chain shot that is equipped in the front of the ship, which is quite strange as these cannon types came quite useful in 3 when destroying master of big ships. It is a bit disappointing that they were again dumbed down to just doing damage and reducing the speed of ships, but honestly I wouldn't notice much of a difference in the speed of enemy ships after shooting them with this. Heavy shot is still the beast of a weapon and does shit ton of damage in close range. It's my go-to. We also have the addition of mortars which could be used to make aerial shots. This is another incredibly useful tool in your arsenal and can be used to deal damage at a long range. Another cool thing is that you can use the thunderstorm to your advantage in taking down ships. Overall, the naval gameplay in Black Flag is a big improvement over that of 3. I have some gripes and nitpicks about it, but I still think they pretty much nailed the naval gameplay and I couldn't ask for better. That's all for the gameplay segment of this video. Now it's finally time to get more into the fun side activities that this game has to offer. And boy are there so many of them. There's plenty of side activities to engage in Black Flag for a good amount of coin. Let's start off with plundering ships first. Since you're playing as a pirate, it naturally makes sense to attack and steal goods from ships. Plundering is exactly that, where you can get certain amounts of goods and cargo by incapacitating ships and boarding them. You can see the amount of goods the ship is carrying using a spyglass, which is kind of like the eagle vision of the sea in a way. You can also use it to mark ships that you want to go after. During the boarding, there are certain objectives that you have to finish to take complete control of the ship, like taking out a certain amount of enemies, killing the ship captain, destroying their gunpowder reserves. But it's a race against time, as the longer it takes for you to finish these objectives, the more crew members you're likely to lose. So you can save a lot of time by taking out the enemy ship's crew using the swivel guns. This is especially useful in smaller ships like the schooner. Speaking of ships, there are 4 main types that you would face in this game. The first being measly gunboats, which you can literally destroy by ramming them and looting whatever loot they have left over. Secondly, you have schooners, who are slightly bigger than gunboats. These two are relatively easy to take out. Then you have brigs, which are pretty much the same size as Jackdaw and are slightly more of a challenge. They also use their sharp ends to ram you in order to do lots of damage. We then have frigates. These ships are pretty dangerous as they're capable of doing lots of damage if you get within their cannon fire range, so it's better to finish them off as soon as possible. Lastly, we have the beast of a ship called the Man of War. These are the toughest ships you can fight in the game, as they will use deadly mortar fire on you and you should avoid their range. It's best to take them out using mortars or heavy shots to do lots of damage. Upon completing the boarding, you have 3 options of what you want to do with the ship. You can either salvage it and use it to repair the Jackdaw. You can send the ship to your fleet in order to be used in the Kenway's fleet minigame, which is something I'll get into in a bit. And you could also lower your wanted level. Yes, you're not completely free of notoriety from sea either now, as once your wanted level bar fills up completely, you start having pirate hunter ships looking around for you, who can easily be distinguished by their red sails. They'll follow you around everywhere like a clingy girlfriend. To avoid this, you can simply pay an official or lower your wanted level after plundering a ship, as I said. You can also say fuck it and take them down. I do like this mechanic as it places more emphasis on being discreet like an assassin and not calling a lot of attention to yourself on the seas as well. You can use the goods taken from ships in order to upgrade the jackdaw to make it much more stronger and formidable in sea. You can also craft the sails for a ship using cloth and figureheads using wood in order to change up the way the ship looks. You can also loot cargo floating on the ocean and also rescue shipwrecked crew members. Crew members can also be recruited from the tavern, which you have to unlock by engaging in a bar fight. You could also get crew members by rescuing them from the guards that are attacking them. Now getting to the Kenway fleet, this is a pretty cool little mini game you can do in this game. However, it needs to be accessed to the Ubisoft online servers, which is always a good time. Because of this, I had a lot of problems trying to access the fleet as it would not load in at all. So I had to use a fix that I found on the Steam forums to get it working. The gist of it is that you have to send your fleet to different ports across different routes in order to trade resources, which in turn gives you money. However, you will encounter ship battles along these routes, which would make travels for your ship difficult. Hence, you gotta clear these routes of enemies until they're safe again. This feature is fun to mess around with for a bit, but the novelty wears off really quick, and I stopped giving a shit after doing some of these battles and missions. Outside of the main ship types you will be fighting in this game, you have the legendary ships. These are equivalent to Dark Souls bosses in terms of difficulty. There are 4 of these ships, each with their own perks that make them deadly. For example, the El Imputo is fast on water and will come in close to ram you so hard that you wish it were a dude doing it to you instead. I mean what? Sorry, that came out wrong. So you're gonna have to strategize on how to beat them. I had a pretty hard time trying to beat all of them, but it was worth it, man. Especially for the rewards you get after. These bosses are great as each of these ships stand out and offer a certain challenge that you have to overcome and come out on top. The other things that you could do on sea is capturing forts. It's fairly straightforward. You first take out fort defenses, infiltrate the fort, take out the fort captain and then the fort commander in the war room. And the fort is yours. Now this is all good, but I wish there were other methods to capture these forts, like sneaking into them using complete stealth and taking out the fort captains that way. Then you can send an alarm to your ship to attack and then you can take over the fort once the enemy surrenders. It would have been cool as it changes up your playstyle and gives you more options as to how to play this game. Now let's venture deep into the sea. Underwater shipwrecks are another such side activity that allows you to appreciate the beauty inside the waters of the Caribbean. You use a diving bell to dive deep down into the ocean's surface. Then you're free to explore, loot chests and find collectibles. But beware, since inside the ocean isn't completely free of danger, as you have sharks wandering around these shipwrecks and they will attack you as soon as they have a look at you, so it's best to hide in seaweed patches to avoid being seen. You also have these fuckers. They nearly gave me a heart attack when they jump scared me out of nowhere. Alright, let's make our way. Alright. Ah! These are moray eels and they usually hide in seaweed patches and you can find out where they are as they make a certain hissing noise. So it's best to avoid them. You can also run out of breath relatively quickly, so you must replenish it by using air barrels that your crew throws down for you. Air pockets within caves can also be used. The cool thing about these underwater activities is that some of them open up to these areas called smuggler dens, which are full of enemies. I really like this since it changes up things a little and adds more variation to this side activity besides just exploring shipwrecks and caves. Since these dens are full of enemies, it places extra emphasis on stealth as Edward has pretty much no armor or weapons to use here. So it does make it a good challenge since you have to take out these enemies without being noticed. There's also a target from an assassination contract that you can kill in this den, which is pretty cool. Speaking of assassination contracts, they are back and are a huge step up from 3, as you have more challenges now in taking out your target as they are surrounded by other enemies. Taking targets out using complete stealth also rewards you extra money, which is nice as it gives more encouragement to interact with stealth in this game. You also have naval contracts that work similarly to privateering contracts in AC3, which rewards you with some amount of money upon completion. You can also earn coin and other useful cargo by looting warehouses. These were also fun to do as it gives you another opportunity to use stealth in. As I said, I like that this game provides you with more avenues to use stealth. The way these work is that you first spot the guard holding the key using Ego Vision, you loot them and then use it to unlock the door of the warehouse. You also get bonus rewards if you don't manage to ring any alarm bells, which encourages the player to go out of their way to disable these alarm bells. Another good way to earn money is by plundering royal convoys. The hunting system makes a return from 3. You can use it to craft health and weapon upgrades for Edward. These can also be used to craft outfits. There are a plethora of animals that you can hunt in this game, which is cool. I love being spoiled for choice when it comes to killing animals. I'm sure I'll get cancelled by PETA for saying this. This time around you can also hunt big fish and mammals like sharks and whales in the sea using harpooning. Another fun side activity where you throw harpoons on the fish and impale them until the health bar is all the way down. Beware that these animals can also attack your rowboat, so it's important to upgrade the rowboat's armor to the Harbor Master. One thing that I like about hunting in AC4 is that it's necessary to do in order to upgrade yourself. However, you could literally buy hunting goods from a shop, so it makes hunting quite useless. Now the last major activity that the game offers are Templar hunts, which are similar to assassination contracts wherein you have a main target to assassinate. but it's a set of missions you gotta do with your assassin companions. These are typically pretty fun mission-wise, but the assassin companions you interact with in these missions are pretty poorly written and underwhelming. Although I did like the Templar hunt involving the two brothers, as it was pretty sad to find out that you have to kill one of them as he's corrupted by the influence of a Templar woman he fell in love with. By unlocking these missions, you get these Templar keys, which can be used to unlock the Templar armor locked up in Edward's mansion. You need 5 of these keys to unlock the armor. One is given to you in the main story, and the other 4 can be obtained by completing these Templar hunts. The armor also looks pretty cool, not gonna lie. There are also many collectibles in this game. The ones that are actually worth collecting are firstly the sea shanties. These are similar to the almanacs from AC3, wherein you gotta chase them down as they're getting blown by the wind. The good thing with collecting these is that it gives you some absolute banger songs for your crew to sing while sailing the high seas.
Down to Trinidad to see Sally Brown, boys. Row, boys, row, boys, row.
My personal favorite ones are Lowlands Away, Roll Boys Roll, and Lever Johnny. These songs really help me relax, and it really lightens the mood in between tense ship battles. Then we have Mayan Stones that you can get by completing these mini environment puzzles. After completing all these, you unlock the Mayan armor. This is a pretty cool piece of armor and can pretty much deflect any bullets, so you're immune to them. Another cool addition to the game are treasure maps, which you can find scattered across the world. You track down the coordinates given in the map in order to find the treasure. I know it sounds fairly simple, but it's a nice little treasure hunt that you could do whilst you're exploring the world. This is pretty much it with the side content of this game. As you can see, there's clearly a lot you can do in this game. I do think plundering ships for cargo got old for me pretty quick, as it follows the same mundane set of objectives you need to complete, which is generally a problem with Ubisoft games that I have, where the side content feels more like a checklist of things to clear out rather than organically coming across unique and interesting stuff in the open world while exploring. Another issue I have with this game's exploration is that I don't like how the island icons and their names are easily readable from the map, which really takes away the immersion of discovering these places by coming across it naturally. I do think this game handles the side content the best way it could, but it's not something that will continuously keep you engaged for hours and hours. You're likely to get bored doing the same stuff over and over again after 30 plus hours. Now that we're done discussing everything ranging from gameplay, the open world, and the side content, it's about time we dive into Assassin's Creed 4's main story. Assassin's Creed 4 has a beautiful story about greed, companionship, loss, and redemption. We follow Edward Kenway, grandfather of Connor and father of Haytham Kenway. He's a man who's not very happy with his life back in Wales, so he decides to join the life of piracy in the Caribbean. Initially, we see Edward as a very ambitious yet greedy man, who uses people to get what he wants, not giving a crap of how it hurts them. But the character growth and journey he goes through in this game is incredible. We also meet a stellar cast of characters on his journey, such as the likes of Addie Volley, Mary Reed, Blackbeard, Charles Wayne, Anne Bonny, and there are so many others. I have to say, the voice acting for each of the main cast of characters in this game is absolutely spectacular. Such a shame that this is one of the last times we get great voice acting from an Assassin's Creed game, as the quality of voice acting has significantly dropped, especially in the recent entries. It also looks pretty bad from what we have seen of Assassin's Creed Shadows so far. Another thing that this game does really well are the facial animations. It's absolutely crazy to me that an 11-year-old game has better facial animations than any modern Ubisoft game. Edward's obsession with finding the observatory causes him to lose not only his close friends and family but also himself. The observatory is a first civilization site in which you can use to see through a person's eyes using their vial of blood. However, it needs a sage to activate it. I won't really go into much detail as to who they are, as you can go and watch videos or read the Assassin's Creed wiki page to understand the full lore behind them. Bartholomew Roberts is our sage, who was also one of the most successful pirates in the Caribbean at the time. Edward spends majority of the game to track him down. We also spend majority of this game doing long-winded tailing and eavesdropp missions, which is the main criticism the AC community has with this game's mission structure. There are a lot of missions that involve you tailing someone, like it's borderline comical at this point. I forgot how irritating and boring it was to do these. Thank God the main story is engaging enough to get me through these, or I would have given up on life long ago. Upon meeting Bartholomew Roberts and convincing him to work with us, you start seeing a downward spiral in Edward's character. At that point, he is willing to do literally anything to get to the observatory, even harm the innocent locals who are protecting this place. But of course, not surprisingly, we are betrayed by Roberts, which leads to Edward to really reflect and look within himself to understand what he truly wants. I gotta say, replaying this game's story and paying close attention to it this time around and understanding what it means was wonderful. There's so much stuff that I missed out on playing this game as a kid. I know it's meant to be an adult game, but who really cares, to be honest? I really related to Edward's character, as I'm now in my early 20s, almost close to finishing university and off to joining the workforce. I feel lost just like Edward and also have a great deal of ambition in focusing on growing this YouTube channel and starting a career. Yet at the same time, I think that just like Edward, I don't really think I appreciate what I truly have in life, and I'm constantly chasing the next big thing. I didn't think I'd connect this deeply with this game's story, and it's a testament to how good the writing is. So after a deep reflection and a shift in perspective, Edward finally finds his calling and decides to join the Assassins and clean up the mess he's made of things. I do think the character development of Edward is slightly rushed here, as it only took 2 to 3 missions for him to go from being selfish and materialistic to being wiser than the Grandmaster of the Assassins, which I found a little jarring. But as I said, this game is a fantastic Assassin's Creed game, as not only does it have a deeply personal story of growth and development, but it also delves deep into what the Assassin's Creed actually means, especially the maxim of the creed, which states that nothing is true and everything is permitted. Nothing is true means that the reality we live in is uncertain and we cannot truly perceive it. So be what you want to be and choose your own path. Everything is permitted means that even though you have the freedom to live your life, you gotta do it wisely. You gotta take personal accountability and responsibility for your decisions and actions. Most games in the franchise haven't really touched upon the creed itself. As far as I know, Assassin's Creed 1, Revelations and AC4 are the only ones that delve deep into it. The Templars in this game are also very interesting and well written. They're probably the most underappreciated part of this game's story. Just like the Templars from AC3, they're very nuanced and make valid points to back up their beliefs. They genuinely wanted to use the observatory for noble intentions, to snuff out lies and seek justice to maintain proper authority and control so society doesn't fall into chaos. Just like how it did in Nassau, as the pirates there didn't know how to maintain this colony due to their conflicting interests and idleness, which led to people getting sick and hungry under their wing with no proper care and attention given to that issue. Anyway, getting to the ending of this game, it never fails to cheer me up. It ends with this lovely song called The Parting Glass, sang by Anne Bonny, as Edward proceeds to make his way to the ship that would take him back to England. He is greeted by his adorable daughter, and the game ends as soon as they're reunited. It's simply beautiful, and I couldn't ask for anything better. It's a bittersweet ending, yet still hopeful in a way, as an old chapter closes in Edward's life and a new chapter begins. I also really like the cameo scene of young Haytham in the post-credits. Man, seeing these characters together really makes me wish we got a sequel with Edward. There's so much of his life that would have been interesting to see after Black Flag. But still, I'm happy with the closure that we got with this character. Anyway, now that's the main story of Black Flag. There's also the present day storyline, but there isn't really much to talk about here, since it's super boring and not worth paying attention to. There is some cool stuff that is set up, but knowing Ubisoft's treatment of this franchise after AC3, all these setups end with no payoff whatsoever. The Juno cameo is pretty much a joke, as we know what happens to her story after this. And yeah, the modern day pretty much is skippable and not worth paying attention to, unless you like playing as a Ubisoft employee working under pretty shitty executives and management with very questionable safety measures. I mean, they literally drugged and locked us up in a room. Pretty sure this kind of stuff goes down at Ubisoft, given the sexual assault allegations that came out a few years ago. For me, this modern day ultimately does nothing, and they really should have scrapped it off entirely after AC3. Although, I would say there are some cool documents, audio logs and other stuff that adds to the overall lore of Assassin's Creed that you can find by doing these stupid hacking minigames. I hate them, but it is worth checking out if you're a hardcore AC fan like me, or at least used to be. That's really all I wanted to talk about with regards to the narrative of AC4. It is definitely one of the best stories not only in the franchise but gaming in general. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is a fantastic game, but it's often misunderstood as only being a great pirate game. While I do think that it really delivers on the pirate fantasy pretty well, calling it a bad Assassin's Creed game is doing it a disservice, as there's so much in the main story that is very clearly Assassin's Creed if you pay close attention. Replaying this game was a great experience and one that I'll never forget. This game has aged pretty well graphically and even gameplay wise. Although the gameplay loop does get boring after a while, I still had fun exploring and doing every side content I could find in the Caribbean. Sailing the seas with your crew singing in the background never gets old and keeps you immersed. I just wish there weren't as many tailing missions in the game, that the combat was slightly more challenging and engaging to the player. But all that being said, I had a blast replaying Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and I haven't had this much fun playing a Ubisoft game. It's truly a one-of-a-kind game that not only delivers a fun pirate adventure, but also gives us a deeply meaningful Assassin's Creed storyline that really resonated with me. It truly stands on its own as one of the best entries in this long-running franchise. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. I'd like to apologize that this video took way longer than expected, but Assassin's Creed 4 is a mighty beast of a game to tackle, so it took me a while to do most of the content that the game has to offer. It was still a fun project to work on, and I hope to do more content like this in the future, so stay tuned for that. But until then, wish you guys a good day, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye!